okay?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, dear students, faculty members, and valuable guests. As we are only 3 days away from saying a good farewell to this nothing less than extraordinary year, welcome to the 12th and last meeting of 2020 of ArchiDesign Talks of Bahçeşehir University Faculty of Architecture and Design. This evening, our guests are Ömer Kanıpak and Orhan Kolukısa, co-founding partners of Yerçekim, Photographing Architecture and Built Environment. Beyond the traditional roles of architects, the design and construction practices, both Ömer and Orhan are practicing in the exciting and expanded territories of architecture that blends beautifully with writing, publishing, communicating, visual arts, and yes, photography. And we can say that a deep interest in all those that has to do with architecture. Today, we invited them for their work and thinking in architectural photography, Yerçekim. I'll make a brief introduction about them now, but to be unfolded as we proceed into the presentation, I believe. I will start with Ömer. Ömer holds his professional degree from Istanbul Technical University Department of Architecture, followed by his graduate studies at MIT School of Architecture, History Theory and Criticism Department. Probably you all heard about Architera, heard about Atölye Karaköy, the TAK Tasarım Atölyesi Kadıköy. We talk about it in the studios, actually, Kadıköy, I'm sorry. Kanıpak has been one of the co-founders of Architera back then and involved in the establishment of TAK also. And he practices as freelance architect, also teaches, writes, and serves as jury members and consultant in various architectural platforms. And Orhan Kolukısa holds again his degree in architecture from Istanbul Technical University, and of course he has to do something different, so he has his master degree from the same university, Department of Industrial Design. Since then he's been working, lecturing on architecture, design, graphical visualization, works as an architect, artist, and photographer, and actually I think he has a Swiss Army knife also, which he can do everything together. And I think the name Yerçekim also deserves a separate introduction. Maybe you will talk about it, but I will too. For our international students, we might explain this word. Yerçekim means gravity. That's the unescapable ultimate subjection of architecture in the world. And also it means photographing place. So as for the title of the lecture, I couldn't actually think a better title than Yerçekim. So it's a nice word that you catch, great name. For the firm, two architects are photographing architectures. They both have published photographs internationally in printed and digital media, and not without awards. And now, cities apart, Istanbul, Berlin, London, they are continuing their practices and productions on all over the map, just like our students this last 2 semesters. I had the chance to work with them, both of them, in Bahçeşehir University in years 2011 to 13, when we had the most exciting studios and juries in the second-year studios in architecture. So I'm happy and excited to be hosting them once more here, hopefully in the coming times again. Welcome, dear Ömer and Orhan. The screen is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How can we start? Let's share our presentation first. Thank you for the nice introductions and the nice words, Turnev. And I think we have nothing to add more to that introduction. And but please do interrupt us while we are speaking over the slides, so that can be more interactive discussion. And I think the students can also add the questions nearby. And let's see how we can share it now. Do you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. This is our name and our logo, which is designed by Orhan. And we have been operating since 2014, but our roots goes back to our education time in Taşkışla, Istanbul Technical University, and these are one of the cards that we produced during our education in the School of Architecture in Istanbul Technical University, and I was one of the founders of the Taşkışla photography group, which didn't exist before we studied there. So we are really proud of, starting such an initiative in the school, which we had worked together with our friends from there, and we just used the old cameras and the darkroom equipments there, which we have founded in the school. This is not the exact images of those equipments that we had used there, but almost
it's
similar.
quite similar, yeah.
So we started on the analog age of the photography, but eventually we just transferred to the digital ones. But we produced our own prints in that darkroom of the school.
Yeah, Ömer and a few other friends who were there in the beginning. Ömer, you and
me, Orhan and Erhan, which were actually 2 classes above us, I think.
Yeah.
Ömer Yılmaz, Devrim. Lots of people who also attended afterwards, because there was no such club before we entered the school, and so it was a quite attraction for many students there. And we did lots of excursions into Turkey through that club, actually.
Yeah, that's right. We are 2 years apart. We were 2 years apart during university. Ömer is 2 years older than me, and they formed this club. Actually, clubs were banned at that time because of the political environment. So that's hence the name of the club is Taşkışla Photography Group.
Yes.
Because they couldn't call it a club because of the because it was banned anyway. So these are our very early cameras. The one on the right is my very first camera. It was a present from a photographer. On the left, was it yours or was it something in the darkroom?
It's very old, actually. It was one of the cameras of my dad, actually.
Okay.
So I inherited it, and it's a bit quite different than the normal regular cameras because it used roll film, which is 6x6. But I just experimented with that camera at the first months of my interest, actually.
Yeah.
And then afterwards we switched to other cameras, which are more advanced, but still they are analog, actually. The appearance seems to be digital, but they were using roll films.
Yeah, these are 35mm cameras, actually, because it was still the analog age, and so we had to shoot film. And most of the photographs we shot. We'll come to that. Sorry. In the next slide. Thanks. Thank you, Ömer. This is one of my very early projects in the school. This is from my second year in Ferhan Yürekli's studio. I dreamed of something like a cloud city or something like that. These are not very well fitting to this scale, but anyway, so I shot these photographs at school, photographs of the flying thing, and gathered these other photographs of Istanbul, and I managed to put them together in the darkroom. Anyway, so we could do Photoshop back then. We had all analog.
Real, actual Photoshop, photo manipulation, we can say.
Yeah.
The primitive one.
Yeah, very primitive. I personally didn't do this one, but this Beyaz Duvar was a magazine, a students' magazine, back in Taşkışla. It's, I think, the first year. What was it? It's 1996 or 1995. It must be. So this this is a Photoshop work. This is a friend of ours, by the way, on the cover, Erbu. And as you may well guess, the corridor is one of those huge corridors of Taşkışla. Of course, they were both photographed separately. And a friend of ours, I think it was Cemücer or Aydın Erdem, I can't remember which one, managed to Photoshop them together. So this is a very early example of digital darkroom technique. I think it was Photoshop 1.0 or something like that. I can't remember, but we just added this to the slides just to give a sense of the era. I mean, it's just
the transition period. You can.
Yeah, exactly. The cameras and all the everything was in analog mode, but then came the computers.
Yeah, the scanners and the computers.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is one of two pictures from your excursions, I think, Orhan?
Yeah. Most of the photographs I shot back in those days were from these project tours. I don't know the exact word for that. In Ferhan Yürekli's studio, we traveled. I mean, each year, I think that was his intention. Each year, the studio went to someplace else for as a project. And so these were the one on the left is from Milas, I think, and one on the right is from Cappadocia. They are from 1993 and 1994, I guess, or 94, 95 maybe. And most of I remember getting these. Having this connection between this going to places and taking photographs, and I still have that connection. Somehow photographing things is very strongly related to the motion itself in my mind. Anyway, so Ömer.
Okay.
These are from Cappadocia as well, just to give you an example of these excursions.
I think you used a very grainy film here, actually.
Yeah, actually, the tip came from you.
Really?
I was using these Ilford films. You remember them?
Yeah,
I think you were using Ilford 200 ISO films.
400 I was using.
Anyway, so we talked about this, exposing these for 400, and then in the lab, we did something in the lab. It's a very long process. It's hard to tell.
Under developing it.
Yeah, it's probably like that. Yeah.
So this was, I think, until 1996, because after 1996 I went to United States, to Boston, to do my master's there. And this is not from Boston. I didn't have my camera there. This was shot on a very primitive point-and-shoot camera, which is still analog on film. And I put these images because they are they are not actually very perfectly captured architectural photographs, but still they are important because you cannot take these pictures anymore, because you know that these two buildings are just collapsed in 9/11. So I think they are still have an historical impact, maybe on me, I don't know. But I didn't have so much time on to go on photography and shooting photography in the United States, because the study was really hard there and I didn't have so much time to focus on other activities. So these are the only two pictures that I can present you from that period, I suppose.
I kind of lost my connection with photography for a while. like Ömer. After school, I started working as an architect, and then later as a graphic designer. And in the process, I lost the touch. So meanwhile, things changed. Digital cameras came out, and at one period there was these two cameras. Both technologies remained. Like there were digital cameras and analog cameras, and you can use. You could use parts from analog cameras on digital ones, and vice versa. So eventually, I think it was 2008 or 7. I can't remember the exact year, but Haydar Karabey, we call him Haydar Abi, he's a famous Turkish architect. He gave me this huge bag of cameras and lenses from. He said he couldn't use them anymore, so he gave me this camera, which is a Nikon, as you can see, and there was 5 or 6 lenses with it, and I was feeling a little distant with this new technology, the digital photography and the whole technology itself, because of the way you use the camera changed slightly. And anyway, I somehow started to use these lenses on my new digital camera. So it changed the whole. Anyway, I was back. To photography.
When was it? In 2000?
I think it was 2008 or 9. So there was this 5 or 6 year gap or 8 year gap there. The time I used point and shoot cameras and etc.
Yeah.
But then this actually was an important moment for me. The day I went to Haydar Karabey's office and he giving me this huge bag of lenses and cameras, and then I took this, and then I had this two. I went to Russia and the US. I lived in the US for 2 years, and I went to Russia I went to Siberia for a month and etc. And I took my camera with me, of course. And these 2 trips definitely changed the way I look and look at the world and photograph the world, and basically shaped my how my photography would be in the future. This is from Siberia. It's from the Baikal Lake, which is frozen in this picture. And the next 2 photographs are from the US. Yeah. So this is 2010 and 2011, I think.
So we have almost the similar hats. Although we didn't have so much connections with Orhan before, because after I returned from my master's from the United States to Turkey, I did my military service, then I started working on Architera, and that took off 10 years of my life, and I didn't have any time actually to focus on photography at all. I became a publishing manager there, and so I was not the producer but the receiver of the photographs. So that's a quite different role actually. So you just have an experience of how you actually receive the photographs, or how you look at the photographs of the architecture actually. So I think after Architera, that pushed me to produce photographs actually, and returned back to my old interest. And because I didn't have any time at all, so that was the breaking point. After Architera, I quit Architera position and I started to shoot again. I bought a camera again and started shooting. And so I think between 2000 and 2014, I shoot separately, and we didn't have so much connections with Orhan, although I was following him from a distance, and I think we have some connections, but not so much. And in 2014, while we were discussing what can we do together, Yerçekim born out of this idea, actually.
Yeah. Actually, we started talking about this I think it was in 2012, but
yeah,
late 2012 maybe. And in 2013, we decided to do this, but it took a year to to start it. I mean, it was even to decide the name took like 3 months or 4 months, I guess.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah. So we founded Yerçekim in I think it was late November 2014. So it's like 6 years now.
And we started shooting with working with architects, and this is one of our first commissions from creative architects. Aydan Volkan, who just gave us one of our first commissions, which is a large campus building in Istanbul, in Tuzla area, pre-race university. And when we decided on to go to shoot the building, and you just arrange everything with the university. The client, of course, creative architects, just says that 2 photographers are going to come to the building and they are going to shoot, so they require necessary permissions for us. And the day when we went there, there was a rainy day, so we couldn't skip or change the day, but we decided to shoot it. And actually, it turned out to be a very nice shooting day, because this is a maritime university which is dealing with the education of the students who are going to work on the maritime industry. And the rain actually turned the atmosphere into a fitting position for the whole context, actually. So this is a large complex, and the reflections which is caused by the rain of the surfaces actually pretty suited the content of the building, I suppose.
Yeah. This was like a few blocks, big blocks of buildings. They're connected with these pathways, and the whole rain thing. We checked the weather and everything, but eventually it was quite a surprise. But it turned out to be fine.
So
it felt like a ship.
Yeah, the architectural inspiration is also coming out of the ship, because you see these are like the decks of the ships, actually, which is wooden mostly, and all those crude materials, which also has references to the ship industry. But the rain and the reflections also added a second level to our images, actually, which is, I think it works quite well. In most cases, architectural photography doesn't like the weathers which are not sunny or not bright, but in our cases, we were lucky, I suppose.
Yeah. And that was our, I think, was it our, that was our very first commission photo shoot.
The pre-race, that one. It
was a quite lucky one. And this is Tea House from Onur Teke Architects. This is also one of our early photo shoots, not the first, of course, but this is one of our early photo shoots, which turned out to be quite successful. I think in that time we had some ideas about photography and how to shoot architecture and built environment. In the very beginning, we had some ideas, but I think in the beginning, in the maybe first 6 months or even in the first year, we didn't exactly know how to implement these ideas, or even these. Maybe we can say we can call these principles, but we didn't exactly know how to implement these in our photographs. I think in the process, like of this 6 months or a year and working together and being a school for each other, I think this is probably our earliest photo shoots that we somehow managed to exactly managed to implement those ideas in our photography. I mean, that's what I think. What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we were actually learning on the way, I suppose, and I mean, there was not so much people to follow up at that time. So we were also, I mean, experimenting with our own shootings, and this is one of the best examples that how to include the context to the frame. I mean, this was a small house in a very rural area of Izmir, in Karaburun area. It was a very nice house, and we just spent 2 days there. And I think spending some time inside or nearby what you are shooting is very crucial, because in most cases you don't have so much time to shoot and experience the object that you are shooting. But here we were lucky because we were staying nearby, and we were also experimenting the building in different light conditions. And this shot, for instance, was shot at the very early in the morning, and we planned that one before the previous day. That, I mean, it's going to be much nicer to shoot it in the sunrise, and so it's looking to the west, and so the sun is actually rising from behind the camera, and it's also reflecting the inside, and just making the building in the middle of the frame. And I mean, these two large trees which are actually framing the building, and it was also a very windy day, so when you look at the leaves here around, I mean, you can see some kind of blur, so it also reflects the atmosphere there, I suppose. As you can see.
This still is one of my favorite photographs after 5 or 5.5 years, I think. This is from the, I think that while you were shooting the other facade, I was here, Ömer. And you can see the trees moving with the wind. And I mean, what I like most about this is, normally we don't use these photographs in editorial photo shoots, you know, because of the whole blurry side of the photograph, because of the motion blur of the trees. But I mean, in this case, the whole stability, this even I can say the serenity of the house, how calm and warm it is conflicting with the motion around it, with all the wind and the motion of the trees. So the contrast of it gives this sense of place. I mean, because Karaburun is a very windy area, you know, and it adds another layer to the photograph itself.
Yeah, and since we spent 2 days there, we can also have the chance. We did have the chance to see in different light conditions. Like, I mean, this is the mid of the day, and very severe, harsh shadows. So, but it also creates a different pattern on the walls. So we captured it that way, and also how the building is interacting with the natural environment nearby here, and you just see the warm light. I think it was again in the morning, because the sun is just, I mean, coming through the right here. And this is another building in Istanbul, office building from Hayriye Sözen Architects. And the interior is also interesting here. I mean, there are lots of pictures, of course, while we are shooting a building. I mean, you shoot the exterior, interior also, but the interior is interesting here because we shoot these staircases from the elevators when you see it on the right. So this atrium is actually working in two ways. I mean, one of the side is reserved for the staircases, which is also a very dynamic space because you can see people climbing up and down that stairs. And the elevators on the right, you can see they are actually working all day long, actually. So we shoot these atriums from two sides. And you can see people working here. I mean, the building is very nice here. Sometimes we shoot very temporary structures like this one, which is done by SO Design. They did those hanging gardens near Ortaköy. And I think the structure didn't last more than 1 month. But in most cases, I mean, the photography is actually like a record of the building. So so you don't see the building at all, but we try to capture how the people are experiencing or experienced that structure at that time. And this was a very nice building, and people were actually hanging underneath those movable pots, and they were trying to pull up those pots up and down. It's a very playful structure, and it's a very nice design, I suppose. And of course, we shoot very large buildings, not unlike the previous one. This is again from Creative Architects, the Koç University Hospital in Topkapı. I think this shooting took, correct me if I'm wrong, 4 days, something like that, because we shoot the interiors also as well. So we spent 4 days, two photographers to capture the whole building.
Yeah.
And this is from the interior courtyards of the hospital. Sometimes you are actually attracted to the reflections or the textures or the colors of the building that you are shooting. So, I mean, usually we don't get so much detailed briefs from the architects. So you have to, of course, we study the plans and the sections and the project before we start shooting, and we plan our shooting day beforehand. But still, you might be surprised at what you are seeing actually during the shooting time actually. And some frames are coming out of this surprising moments. And the one on the left, for instance, I was not expecting such a reflection, and here, I mean, but when you go there, you just capture it.
This is a very recent one, Beylikdüzü Cemevi. I mean, this was one of my favorite photo shoots from this year. I mean, when I'm shooting these buildings with different, I mean, this building specifically had different blocks around it, so I wanted to incorporate these by including a small part of the other building in this frame. And yeah, I think that's what I can say about it.
Yeah, I mean, you are trying to, I mean, and sometimes you are trying to include lots of information into one frame. Sometimes you need to extract some information out of the frame. I mean, I think you try to show the material of the other block in more detail, I think, here. And
yeah. This is from 2019, I guess. This is Pub Architects, Gökçeada High School. I mean, but I included this photo to this presentation because it's quite important for me because Burçin from Pub Architects had this. They all had this idea and image in their heads while working on it. Because when an architect is working on a building, they have these images of the building in their minds, and these images are somehow they become solid in the process, not in the sense of building, but in way of architectural communication, like drawing models and 3D models and renders, and eventually you have this very solid image of the building in your mind. So they had this idea of a photograph of this building. It's like this is a very big building, by the way. They had this idea of this photograph from this side of the building, like a very panoramic shot showing all the surfaces of all the facade of this building. But I mean, when we got there, I mean, I didn't have a lens for that. I mean, it's too big, and there's no way I can fit all of this in a frame. So I decided to crop this shot like that, and we argued about it in the process. I mean, because I thought this photograph itself, the tree, the blocks, and the shadows and everything, they perfectly summed up the whole experience of this building in my mind. But they had a different idea. But eventually we agreed on this photograph, and they somehow liked and used this a lot.
Yeah, I think, for instance, here, this is from Durmuş Dilekçi Architects nursery in Istanbul. The trees and the landscape actually is something that you just experience when you go to the site. I mean, because you don't have the exact shapes of those trees or the natural environment around the building, even though, I mean, it's a designed landscape. The framing among the trees just opens new ways of looking at the building. Here, for instance, I want to capture the whole facade together with the landscape while, I mean, the children are playing inside in front of the court, their classrooms. So you have to be, I think, open to the surprises when you go to the buildings, because you don't have all the information from the plans or the sections or the drawings, I suppose.
This is Erkal Architects Hacettepe Biodiversity Museum in Ankara. This is also one of my favorite photo shoots, and I'm quite I quite like the building itself as well. I mean, the building was surrounded with this forest, so I decided to frame the building with it instead of taking shots of the building which turn it into a design object. I tried to show the way the building communicates with its surroundings, or how it fits in the context of its surroundings, like this one. And this is what I mean, both Ömer and I mean, we had these ideas of photography in the beginning, but I think these photographs kind of somehow show how it's manifested itself in our minds. Like this one is from Antalya. This is Türkan Şoray
Cultural Center.
Cultural Center in Antalya. The building itself is located in this huge opening in Antalya, but it's surrounded by tall buildings that like the ones you see on the right in the back. So, I mean, I could have shot this in a very early morning light with a much more diffused light, but if I did, it wouldn't have given the sense of its surroundings. Like you can see the shadow of the building next to it coming onto this building, and I preferred this shot instead of a more diffused light to show that the building itself is surrounded by much taller buildings. And I mean, this idea somehow kind of comes from, I mean, I don't like a perfectly finished frame. This is not a painting. I mean, I really like to show that there's something outside the frame as well. So that's why I try to show some parts, even shadows or some parts of the context as well in the photograph, so that you can relate to that specific place, the yer, the place itself.
Similarly, this is another shooting that we did in, what year it was? 2018? No.
Yeah.
Oh, something like that. Maybe 2017.
17.
In Tarsus. It was a very hot day, and I think it was one of the hottest areas of Turkey at that time.
Yeah.
And we did shootings at there, which lasted 3 days, I suppose. And this is the research center for Boğaziçi University for their archaeological excavations in Tarsus area. And this is the back of that complex, which was actually a factory, and it was owned by the university, and they turned it into a very nice research center for archaeologists, and also a library and some storage spaces for the excavations. And here I was lucky that this kid was actually driving his bicycle in front of me, and again you can see the shadows which are actually casted by the higher buildings just behind the camera. So this gives the information that, I mean, just behind that building there are other higher buildings than that one. And it's a very sunny day, as you can see. This is very contrasting with the contrasting shadows and the lights there. So everything is actually adding up new information layer to the photograph, what you include or not, actually. So this is a very calm street, so that means, I mean, actually it's safe for riding bicycles.
Yeah. And about the context and adding context, or I mean, subtracting context from the photograph. This is one of our favorite examples. The one on the top is, I mean, this is Durmuş Dilekçi's project. What was the building called, Ömer?
Selenium. It's right on the top of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see Selenium apartments by Durmuş Dilekçi architects. The photograph on the top shows the real context with the people, the cars, the cardboard collector, and everything. But the one on the bottom is subtracting all those elements, and just keeping the road in the photograph. I mean, in my mind, I had this image of this place, which fits perfectly to these buildings, because even though they look very contemporary, and they look very modern, they are placed in this area of Istanbul, which is quite complicated and very has a very complex traffic around it.
Yeah, it's a very vibrant area actually, with lots of pedestrian and vehicle movement. But in most of the cases on the editorial process, I mean, not all of the pictures that we just delivered to clients are used. I mean, most of them are not used, and most of them are just resting on our or on our client's hard disk actually. But some of them who are not used actually deliver more information than the one that have been used. So it's a very contrasting thing, how you shoot a building and how you just present it.
Yeah.
So after those images, I mean, we just added a section of the presentation that which photographers are inspiring us. I mean, we just try to keep the number as minimum as possible. Of course, there are lots of photographers that we are following up, but this is one of the earliest architectural photographers, Ezra Stoller. Maybe some of you know it. He's an American one, and he mostly shot buildings of the modern area, 1950s, 1960s, in Chicago and New York. And this is one of the earliest pictures of the United Nations building. I like this photograph because, I mean, it also gives another contextual information which is shot across the river. And so it's framed with that big ship. So you know that the building is just not on a beach, but I mean next to a river bank.
Yeah, same goes for this as well. This is TWA building, and this is one of my favorite architectural photographs of all times. I mean, I honestly believe the clouds were pure luck. I mean, I don't think that he chose a cloudy day to get there. I think that's probably pure luck to all those fluffy white clouds and everything. It's just, but it adds a perfect depth to the photograph. And this is an I mean, as you can see, the engines and the wings and the whole streamlined design of the airplane, and you see the building itself, which is somehow related to that. They're all mixed up in this perfect composition, I think.
Yeah. And it's very strange that actually the building is actually occupying a very small portion of the frame. And you look at the ratios, I mean, the plane and the sky is actually occupying most of the frame, but still your eyes are directed to the building.
Yeah.
Very skillfully masterful. Yeah, skill. And this is another photographer that we admire, Bas Prinsen, a Dutch photographer. He's counted as an architectural photographer, but actually he rarely, I mean, get commissioned works. But he shoot architecture in a different way. I mean, this is one of the cooling plants of those huge skyscrapers in Dubai. Most probably, we don't see the skyscraper of those plants. Actually, maybe they are behind us. But you see also the blue shirt workers, which are not most probably, I mean, from Dubai, but from Bangladesh or other areas. So it also have a social context about those buildings. So in most cases, the buildings that you see in the architectural magazines or publications, you don't see the cooling plants or the infrastructure of those buildings or the people who build it actually. So this is a very nice photograph, actually, architectural photograph, a pure architectural one, I suppose. And of course, I mean, the blackness of those huge volume and the scale, which is in contrast of the humans. So when you look at it, I mean, you just read a different level of information in each gaze, actually. And this is another photographer, Nader Kander, actually. He is also very skillful at, I mean, shooting portraits. But his pictures of the built environment is also attracting us because here again, I think it's in China or maybe India, but I think it's China.
China, yeah.
he shot infrastructure which is hugely contrasting with the human scale, and how the people here actually enjoying their time. I mean, underneath those maybe a highway or something like that.
This is Gregor Crutzen himself, of course. I mean, with his camera. He's also one of our favorite photographers, and he uses this large format camera. And if we, we'll see on the next slide that this is from his. I can't remember the name of the series, but he uses these series of techniques and methods for photographing things. I mean, all these people in the photograph are actors or amateur actors, and he uses lights and actors and everything to create this scene like a movie, and then he shoots the photograph. This is not, but it looks like a mundane scene from this town, from this any town, USA, but it's all made up. He works on all the details in his photographs, and this is, I think, one of his early works. Lately, he started to kind of exaggerate all these interventions of him. Like in his later works, he uses a lot of light and floodlights and everything, changing the whole scene. But this is one of his early works.
But we should also state that this is not a photoshopped image.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the things that you see here, actually, they are fabricated there for that, single frame. Even the snow, even the people who are sitting around or walking around. Maybe he even managed to, arrange the yellow lightings on the traffic light. At the same time. So he works before shooting the picture. He has a huge team to work on the scene. So actually, he is making a painting from a camera. Actually, you can say.
It's all shot in analog, by the way. As you've seen the camera, it's a large format camera. Yeah, it's all shot in analog film. It's like producing a film, but for a photograph.
Yeah,
so just one shot.
Yeah, on YouTube you can find how he just managed to take these pictures or similar ones. There's, I think, a backstage story of it.
This is a photograph of Stephen Shore. I think in my mind these two are related, Gregor Crutzen and Stephen Shore. Stephen Shore is an American photographer. He, in the beginning, I like 8 years ago or 6 years ago when I looked at his photographs. I didn't get it actually. All these mundane scenes of everyday life or life of people or things and or places, they didn't make sense. But in the process, I think in the last 2-3 years, I grew a liking of him and his writings, especially on the photo on his photography and the photography itself. He's arguing this idea of structure of a photography instead of composition and balance in it, because he thinks that's what I think also. Composition is like it's related to a synthetic process in his mind. But he says a photograph should have a structure instead of a composition. So where you place your camera, when you place your camera, and the visual relations you create by moving around things and people and places, it creates a certain structure in a photograph. And when you think of it that way and you look at his photographs with this perspective, you'll see that all these mundane scenes of this American cities turn out to be photographic masterpieces. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, he compares it to painting, of course, when he says in summary that, I mean, a painter composes, but a photographer structures the frame, actually.
Yeah.
So this is, I put these two photographs of two different photographers of the same building at the same angle, because to show that, I mean, how a building might be captured by different photographers. In most cases, the architectural publications and even the clients prefer the one on the right, which is more bright and with the sky is blue and gives maybe much more information than the other one on the left. But somehow I like the way of how James Florio captures this building in a day after a sandstorm. It's in China. I mean, the building is just on the beach, a small chapel. But when you look at the building, I mean, they are almost exactly taken from the same viewpoint, but totally in different atmospheric conditions. So the atmosphere actually changes the information which is delivered on the photograph also, but you don't have so much control over the atmosphere. But in most cases, for instance, I prefer to shoot, if I have the chance to, on an overcast day because I think they give a better sense of the textures and the depth of the buildings. But sometimes you need a very strong shadow just to show the texture. I mean, if it's important for the building or for the client. So it all depends on what kind of information you should have to give by that single frame. But I mean, in most cases, you don't have the choice to shoot select the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So I think from 2014 we had shot more than 100 projects, I suppose, with Orhan, and then I moved to London and he moved to Berlin. Now I'm in London since 3 years, and I was actually, I mean, I'm still taking pictures without clients, of course. I mean, both of them actually, as you see on the screen, are not for a particular client, but we always, I mean, shoot architecture because, I mean, I think it's inherited to us to shoot architecture. And so I like these two pictures because they are vertical high-rise buildings. I mean, the one on the left is obviously, you can recognize that this is the UN National Building, United Nations building, and just behind is the Chrysler building, which is juxtaposed together as if they are stick together. I shot this image with a telephoto lens, so I mean, you just flatten the perspective there. I like the contrast of the different eras architecture just side by side. The one on the right is a new recent building in London, which has some kind of an optical illusion. I mean, designed by a London-based architectural office. It's a hotel building, and just behind the camera there rests eye hospital. So the architects just try to reference it, that eye hospital, which is very famous in London, to create an optical illusion of that facade. But again, I mean, it's just, I try to capture with the street, which is just curling there, and as if it is like a photo montage, but it's actually not. I mean, it's just one single frame. Again, another picture from one of my visits to the States, I think 4 years ago, maybe 5. This is New York from Brooklyn side. You can see on the lower side of the frame, there is a flat park, which is some kind of incline. This is Louis Kahn's last work, which is being constructed after his death, the Roosevelt Memorial Park, which was, I mean, luckily opened when I was there. So I was lucky to see it just after it was opened. And I like the way how these trees actually aligned here. And the context behind, of course, is the very famous New York skyline. In most cases, I mean, the surprise factor is actually affecting the photography. And here in Antwerp, the Mass Museum, I mean, I was presenting a video film there, and at that time when I was there, I mean, I didn't have much my professional camera, but I always carry a very small but very capable small camera there. And it happened to be this area, this museum floor has been used by the citizens of Antwerp. I mean, there are not so much green spaces inside the city. So this couple was using this museum area just to have a breakfast picnic there. So I was lucky there to capture them, their intimate conversation just behind the screen, the curved glasses here. And you can see the skyline of the city behind them. In Istanbul, or in most cases in Turkey, I realized that I am shooting the pictures of the decay or the buildings who are actually getting old and not very well maintained. But this one is particularly interesting and important because just after that, you know, the AKM Cultural Center has been left unused for years, and all those glasses were shattered. But I like the way how the frame is capturing the texture of the facade, and while reflecting the flag just behind the square. And I think also the E5 Istanbul, the E5 highway, we call it, the old highway which connects to Istanbul to Ankara, is important because of the built environment which is just flourishing nearby. I mean, it was an industrial area in most cases, but I mean, now they are changing with high rises and office blocks. I like to shoot the buildings and the structures around this highway, and this is one of the pedestrian ways which connects the upper neighborhood to the metro exit just on the right, and I try to capture how the city is just stuck between the sky and the ground with this curved pathway, I mean, which is not very well designed, but just to, I mean, cover a very basic need of pedestrians just to access them from one way to other point. And this is one of the old shipyards of Istanbul. We were making a boat trip with Orhan and Ahmet, and I just captured this one. And then sometimes you take the pictures, but you don't realize what you shot. I mean, in most cases, if you are on a hurry or you don't focus so much, but then you realize what you had captured at home, I mean, while looking at the pictures, and this happened to be one of these cases. I just cropped it just to show how the natural environment and the old huge industrial building, and it looks like a citadel which just blocks the old residential blocks behind that, actually. So the decay, I think, is something, an element that attracts me in most cases, actually, in the built environment. This is a commissioned work for a Swiss architect who is working in London, but this project is in Switzerland. I was lucky to be there just before the opening of the building, so most of the construction were still going on. But just before 1 week of the opening, there was a rehearsal of the orchestra, and I was lucky just happen to be behind the orchestra to shoot the interior of the auditorium. I mean, in most cases, the auditoriums are shot from the seating area, but here I like to capture how the players, the orchestra players, the artists are actually seeing the interior. So this is a different shot of the different viewpoint, actually. And apart from static images, I like to shoot. I am attracted to actually the big, massive ships which is passing through the Bosphorus, and that was a commissioned work actually by Tabanlıoğlu Architects, who was the curator of a exhibition which is done in Antwerp. The exhibition is about the port cities. I mean, the cities who have ports, and so they were comparing how the port is actually, I mean, transforming or making the city to take shape. And so different artists were commissioned different parts for that exhibition, and I was shooting the large ships which are mostly unnoticed by the citizens, and I made a short movie out of it, and we don't have time to show it here, but I mean you can see it on our website. I like how the scale of these large ships are actually contrasting with the texture of the city and the buildings and the people. And it's a very short movie, but it happens to me that, I mean, those large ships are actually mostly unrecognized or unnoticed by the citizens. When you say a ship in Istanbul, in most cases, you just try to remember the small, nice pedestrian ships, the ferries. But in most cases, these are very large structures which are floating on the Bosphorus. And I think they are nicely contrasting with the old textures of those houses. And I also try to make a series out of how the built environment is, I mean, affecting the citizens. And I am attracted to those shiny hoarding panels, or I mean construction site panels, where you can see, I mean, abundantly everywhere in Istanbul. And I try to capture these, how they are actually attracting the way the people are interacting with them, or in most cases they are not attracted at all, but they are being unnoticed. But I think those hoarding panels or the construction panels are actually shaping our environment in a very, I mean, I can't say in a very hard way, but I mean, in a very interesting way, I suppose. And we are getting used to that very easily. But actually, those, I mean, temporary structures sometimes become very permanent. But in most cases, we get used to that, actually. And this is another experiment that I did while I was in lockdown here in London. In most cases, when we shoot architecture, we are stuck with our wide-angle lenses. And while on lockdown here, I try to limit myself and challenge myself by just sticking to a 50mm lens with a handheld camera without a tripod to shoot architecture. And so that's not very common for most of the architectural photographers, because we always carry a tripod and we always, I mean, have to shoot with wide-angle lenses. So I try to see what happens if I was stuck with a 50mm regular lens and a handheld camera. And these are the results of that experiment, actually. if you are on a handheld camera and you don't have a tripod, you have to stick to a very large aperture here, as you can see, just to compensate your handshake, of course. So a depth of field is something that you have to deal with while you are shooting 50 millimeters actually. So you have to select the point which you think it's more important. While shooting architecture, we are, actually closing down the aperture to the 8 or just higher than 8 point, so that everything on the frame becomes sharp. But if you are, using a camera without a tripod and a 50 millimeter, then you have to select the point to focus the lens, and the rest is actually out of the focus. But still, it gives a different feeling. I think, in some cases we might maybe change the lenses and shoot in different lenses other than the wide angles, maybe. And this is one of the photographs. I was awarded with this photograph in 2018 in the International Photo Awards, which is organized every year among the architectural photographers. And I was, I think, lucky to be here with those children who are gazing from that structure, just looking from us to us from above. But actually, I put this picture because I'm going to show the structure here now. This is the structure, and these children are the ones on the right, as you can see, looking down. And when you are commissioned by a client of this design, for instance, this is not the picture in most cases they will going to use in while they are publishing their projects, and a magazine won't use that picture. But somehow, when you submit such a picture, a photograph to architectural photo competition, it might become an award-winning frame. But I want to show you that this is an editorial picture that shows all the information of the building or the structure with the surrounding environment and how it is actually constructed, how the buildings are interacting with the people, and how is it touching to the ground. So there is more information than that one, but it's been awarded. But I think if I submit that one, it's not going to be awarded at all. So in most cases, architectural photography competitions or all photography competitions are actually absurd in my view, because they are not comparing the same type of views or the same type of buildings. So I think it's not a very good way to promote yourself by just how you are being awarded by photography competitions, because they are not actually just a way of comparing photographers' skills, I suppose.
I wasn't expecting this.
Yeah. Do you want to switch the screen?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, you can see that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, other than commissioned works, I also collect a lot of photographs, especially in Turkey and Germany, the places where I live. In Turkey, like Ömer said, it's somehow I end up with these photographs of sprawls and I don't know, the decay of the construction itself. And this is from Istanbul. This is one of my favorite photographs. And these are from Ankara. And every time I'm originally from Ankara, by the way, and every time I get there, I try to take new photographs because Ankara has a very specific, strange way of constructing buildings. Like, in the periphery of Ankara, it's very common to see these high-rise buildings in the middle of nowhere. And I try to photograph these things. I don't know what I will do with these, but I'm just collecting them. Maybe maybe they will turn out to be a photo essay eventually. This is from Ankara as well. And I think by collecting these, I think that's somehow Ömer is trying to do also. And we have this side project to Yerçekim, actually, which is, kind of a visual account of the last 20 years of Turkey, focusing on the built environment, how the built environment had changed in the process, the construction madness, and how it ended up, how we ended up here, how we ended up with these cities. These are all from that collection. This is from Berlin. This is one of my favorite photographs as well. This is because I try to incorporate the contrasts of built environment with the nature itself, when I can, of course. And the old and the new, or the create these anacronyms in photographs. And this photograph reminded me of this Paul Klee painting. I mean, not the photograph itself, of course, the idea behind the photograph, the Angelus Novus painting. So, this is what I thought. It's a long story, but maybe we might have some time later in the future to talk about this. And these are in the last 3 years, I was lucky to work on 3 different books. This one is a very, this is new. This one is very new. This is from Izmir subway construction, metro construction in Izmir. I spent like 6 days underground this June, and ended up with hundreds of photographs from the underground construction. And when I went there, I had this idea of this. This was going to be a photo book, of course, but I had this idea of some kind of machine and construction aesthetics, and I thought I was going to end up with that, with a lot of construction machines and technology and etc. But it turned out to be it's a completely different case, because it's not only the machines that are working. These people are working underground, like 30 meters down there, 50 meters down there, and it's still, even though they're using these huge machines there, it's still everything's made by hand, and it's all blood, sweat, and tears. And I ended up with these hundreds of photographs. Now it's coming out as this book, which is called Metro, of course. This one is Feast of Ashes. It's about the life and art of David Ohannesyan, who was Çinici, who was a mosaic tile artist in the late Ottoman. And I shot his works in Istanbul, and eventually I ended up in Jerusalem shooting his work as well over there. And this is this is Patara. The book was designed by Emre Senan and is published by İş Sanat last year. And luckily, this, I mean, without knowing that, of course, this year, this past year, 2020, was the Patara year. And I shot these, and I mean, this wasn't the first time I shot some aerial photos, but this was, I tried something new there. And I mean, I created this. I mean, Emre Senan, the graphic designer who made this book, he asked me if I could take a photograph from the air that he could use to that can show this, that shows this place as a plan. And I mean, I couldn't get the drone to go up that high because it's a huge place, as you can see. So I shot like 100 or 200 separate photographs, and I put them together in Photoshop. So this is, so I ended up with this 200 or 300 megapixels of an aerial shot of Patara. Yeah. So other than photography, we did some editorial work with Ömer. This is from 2016. The Beton Arts. What was the title of the Ömer?
The title?
Yeah. I mean, they approached us, but I mean, with this idea of architecture and photography, if we could do this editorial work about it. And I mean, we didn't want to limit ourselves with with only photography. So, because photography itself is only one part of our and a whole range of architectural representation techniques. So we try to incorporate other disciplines as well, like paintings and architectural drawings and computer games.
Yeah, it was suretler in Turkish. Yeah.
So and last year, I think this was 2019 or 2018.
2018, yeah. So I mean, between 2018, I think end of 2018 it was. It was again a request from me and Orhan. The former editor of A10 magazine was actually giving a presentation in Europe about the cities, and she asked us if we can capture the loneliness in the city, and we should at the same time, but in different places, of course, in London and in Berlin, how we can capture the loneliness, how people are feeling lonely, or how can they be lonely. And I realized that, I mean, it was almost impossible to feel lonely in Istanbul, but whereas in London, you have the opportunity to experience to be lonely and enjoy to be lonely. I mean, because, I mean, even though it's a very crowded city, I mean, compared to Istanbul, you have the option to stay alone and to be with yourself. But in Istanbul, it's much harder to stay by yourself. I mean, so in the London shots, for instance, in most cases, I mean, people are enjoying themselves to be alone. But whereas I think Orhan was much more having hard time to find those people who are enjoying the loneliness there, actually.
Yeah, and these were presented in the We Make the City festival in Holland. No,
that's true.
Yeah. So and finally, we we did a few workshops in the process. I mean, after we started Yerçekim, and every time we tried different things. This is the poster of a workshop that we did in 2017 in MEF University, I think. And every time we try to learn things from the participants, and then we redesign the workshop itself for another. For the next time we redesign it, so the workshop itself. And this one we did in MEF. Actually, this is not one of our most successful workshops because I don't think we could communicate that well with the participants, but it was. I mean, we learned something out of it. And after that, in 2018, I did another workshop in Salt BAU, which is, as you can see, the title is 3 Fragments. This was way more successful than the earlier one because, I mean, eventually I learned something from the other one and incorporated those ideas to this one. This was focusing of limiting the production itself, like because when you have a digital camera, you're limited with the capacity of the memory card. I mean, so you can shoot thousands of photographs in just one workshop, but I try to limit. I mean, by limiting the photograph, the number of photographs delivered. Maybe I thought that we could focus on the narrative itself, what we're going to tell. It's like, and I incorporated this method of haiku to photography. Maybe we could have 3 photographs which may or may not be related to each other in any way, but the way you represent them might form a meaningful sentence, and it turned out to be okay. This was it, right? Yeah. Okay, that's all the slides we have now.
Thank you, Orhan, Ömer. It was a great journey. Actually, you spent a crazy lifetime from school to, how you work separately and jointly, how you think separately and jointly. So it's very inspirational, and I like that there's life outside of architecture around. I like to see it as a very expanded field. So that's very inspiring. Maybe I don't know, students. Maybe you have some questions. You can write into the chat box for our lecturers.
Yeah.
Now you're welcome to write questions. Sena Hospidis was writing suretler. Yes, suretler, beton art, right? Beton art. Yes,
that's
suretler.
Thanks for the reminding.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe I can. Yes. Hello, man.
Hello, how are you, Durnev?
Hello.
I do have a question or 2 questions. Can I?
Yes, of course, please.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Orhan and Mr. Ömer about this enriching presentations. Like you said, it's a journey. They took us in a journey that associates architecture with the photography, and I think it's also a good experiment for our students because it opens let's say new perspectives for them of the relationship. They can figure, they can sense, they can feel the importance between and the relationship between the project itself and the context. We keep repeating that to them, that the context also is very important to the project, as well as the project is very important to the context. So there is a strong tie relationship between two of them. And thanks for presenting this really in a visual way. My first question is about the future of the photographer as a profession. We know that with the technological advancement, there are, I mean, some professions tend maybe to disappear, some professions tend to change the context, or maybe tend to all be subject to big changes, like the taxi drivers, for example, with the driverless cars, and also with the invention of the drone. Part of the photographer, I mean, now you don't, you know much more than me, but I mean, now you don't have to go with the chop to take aerial photos. Drone would do that.
Yeah.
So the first question is, what is, I mean, is the future of the photographer as a profession, in your opinion? My second question is about, like Mr. Orhan mentioned during the presentation, there is so-called the structure of the photo, or the structure of a photograph, which is really very important. It's not enough to be skillful. I mean, time is here, space is here, frame is here, context, lights, but there are essential factors to the success of a photo, for sure. For example, for sure, but two persons might be at the same time and the same place and would take different photos. So there is something, the sensitivity of the photographer, the eye. I mean, the eye of a photographer. My question is something that we can learn, or something that we are born with?
Yeah. Which one do you take, Ömer?
Okay. Maybe we can start from the last question. And I think everything can be learned, I suppose, as long as you can have enough time to work on it. I mean, of course, you have some kind of intuition to everything that you create. Some things are coming out of your own personality, your own character, and you cannot change some of things. But structuring or giving a soul to a photograph is something I think that can be learned if you have enough time to experience it. Actually, I mean, if you spend so much time to deal how to compare your own shots with the other ones that you like or admire or you want to achieve, I think that can be learned to a certain degree. But of course, this shouldn't be a replication of what you admire, but you have to add your own intuition, your own feelings, or what you can contribute to that frame other than the one that has been admired by you, actually, is important, I think. Anything you want to add, Orhan?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course it can be learned through practice and I mean, or even copying others. But I honestly believe that I mean, everything starts by looking, the light itself. I mean, you know, the first camera is your eye, so the way you look at things is somehow shaping the way you take photographs. So it's, and the way you see things, I mean, you know, seeing itself is not only an optical thing. You know, you don't see what your eyes show you. It's a process in your brain. So I think it starts with looking and seeing. Most of my photographs I don't shoot with a camera. I have these images in my mind. I mean, these images of these places that I've been without taking photographs, or these places that non-existent places and people and objects. but I still have these photographs in my mind. Maybe one day I'll see them and take it. So it's an education of the mind and a method of looking in the beginning. So but you can learn it, and architecture also, the study of architecture really helps with that. I think we were quite lucky. I mean, I even maybe wouldn't have been interested in photography if I didn't go to architecture school, because it gives you a certain not a specific method of looking at built environment, but it gives each student their own methods of looking at built environment. So yeah, you can learn it and develop it.
It's a bit of both, maybe.
Yeah. And about the future of photography, yeah, I'm sorry.
Also constructing the frame is important, and I think it's different. This is a different perception of each one of these human beings. It's we can see the same image or photos, but we don't feel the same. Yeah. So, like you said, feeling the frame, feeling the structure also is very important to produce a good photo or a successful photo.
I mean, sometimes bad photographs are really good ones, by the way. I mean, badly exposed, badly timed photographs sometimes turn out to be very good photographs.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, because
I was not talking about photographs. I was talking about photos only.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So
I think Marzia. Sorry, I interrupted.
There was another question.
Yeah, the future of photography I mean, photography is now probably one of the most democratized areas in the world, because I mean, everyone owns a camera now with their, even smaller ones or mobile phones and etc. So the future of this thing is, I don't know. I mean, not everyone will be a photographer, as we can see, and they won't be photographers, but they will photograph things. And they will enjoy it, which is good for me because I like sharing photographs and looking at other people's photographs. So it's good for us. But looking at it from our perspective as professional photographers or artists, I think it's a good thing for photography, especially for architectural photography, because this democratization process, forced some honesty into architectural photography itself, by the way. Because when you go shoot architectural photographs, we do these things. We choose the perfect time, perfect weather, perfect lighting, and we work on that to do that. And it's a very tedious work. But and we end up with these. We try to end up with these. Let's not say perfect, but very good photographs of this place, giving the sense of space and also adding some aesthetics and enjoyable aesthetic to it as well. So, and then someone comes out with a mobile camera and shoots a completely different photograph, and which is good, by the way. And I like that.
Marzia, Marzia, thank you, Maan.
Thank you very much.
Marzia, I think you left it at hand. Yes. Marzia, yes.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you, Mr. Ömer and Orhan, for your great presentation. I want to ask your suggestion for the students when they take photo of their handmade models, for example, for their project. As you know, in these quarantine days, we really are challenging with some situations when we take our photos, our models. It should be, for example, understandable, but in atmosphere of house, it's really hard. And if you have suggestion for us, I can be really thankful.
Yeah, I think shooting model is a different area of architectural photographers. Not all of them can shoot models. architectural models, because you have to have a certain setting, of course. But the basic primitive thing, I think you should have a plain background of your model. I mean, it could be if white or black cloth. Just, I mean, you can put your model on it, and it should cover the background of your model. So you don't have to deal with the unwanted things in your frame. And to light it, I think you can use a very simple table light, but maybe cover in front of it with a translucent paper just to diffuse the light better, because in most cases the table lights cast very strong shadows on the models, but you don't want that in most cases. So you have to diffuse the light in one way. I mean, covering the lampshade with a translucent paper, or it could be a thin cloth maybe. I mean, these are the basic requirements that you can achieve at home conditions.
Yeah, maybe use multiple lights. I mean, one source of light, like Ömer said, very diffused light to create this. Image, and maybe a second light, like a spotlight, to use on certain aspects of the project, maybe a corner or somewhere else. I mean, maybe use multiple lights to create a scene.
Yeah,
that may help.
Thank you for your answer. I think the light is the most important part. Thank you.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Ayla Erdoğan.
Yes, hello, thank you for your presentation. I would have a question. How do you measure that it becomes the right photo after you make change to the photo? You decide with your feelings that it's right, basically.
I couldn't hear all of it.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear some parts of it.
How do you decide that a photo is the right photo?
Whoa.
Yeah.
How do you feel it?
Do you feel it, Ömer?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, in most cases, I mean, the right photo is not always the right photo for the client or the publisher. I mean, so it depends on who is looking at it actually. But there's no strict formula about the right photo. I mean, it all depends on the building, the place, the atmosphere. I mean, the light conditions. I mean, but you feel it actually when you look at all the shots that you take in that day. Certain images are becoming the hero images actually.
Yeah. We usually take a lot of photographs. I mean, we talk about it a lot. I mean, of course, you're not searching for this perfect photograph of this, a single perfect photograph of a certain space, but we end up with hundreds of photographs from a photo shoot, and then we eliminate most of them. Like we end up, we choose 20 each or 30 each, and then we end up maybe 10 of them. So I don't know which ones are the right ones, because when you say right, it has this sense of perfection in it. But I can say the ones that are okay to use, maybe.
Yes. Oh, I mean, right depends on, I mean, the use and the audience, of course. I mean, if you are shooting the building to sell it, I mean, for real estate purposes, I mean, the most right frame or the most right photograph might not be the best one for the architect, but I mean, it must be the best one for the client because he's going to use it to sell it, maybe. But the architect might prefer another shot from the same set because it shows the space or the texture that he used in the material better. So it all depends on how you are going to use the image actually.
Okay, I see. Thank you so much.
All right. And Tarık Abdülkerim.
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. It was amazing. Thank you. I just wonder, like I know in a street photography you use, for example, 35 milli. So if I am using something for, like, you know, you are using the building, you are taking photo for the building inside and outside, what is the, like, let's say the optimal lens that you can use for inside or outside, or I don't know, like how many lenses should I have to start? And also, what is the right equipment? Like if I want to start, for example, as a starter, I can't buy everything because, you know, these things are expensive. And what do you recommend? That's all. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, your big guns, which ones?
I mean, what do we use? I mean, it's so you can't. I can't say. I mean, this is the perfect lens to start with because I mean we use a lot of lenses, but maybe 35 millimeter is a little
narrow
on the narrower side. Yeah, and 16 or 18 is a little too wide in my opinion. So maybe start with 24 millimeter lens, which is which is not a very good interior photography lens because you might need way more wider lenses, interiors. But it's kind of more versatile when you think about it. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I always go to shooting when the 16 to 35 millimeter is attached to the camera. I mean, that's my most primary lens that I use. And now zoom lenses are much better in terms of quality. So if you are going to buy only one lens, I mean, I would suggest something between 16 to 35. I mean, so it will cover most of your needs, I suppose.
Yeah. Maybe go for, I mean, because you know the contemporary lenses are quite expensive, and they all have this mostly unnecessary electronics in it. But I mean, that's what we have now. But maybe you can buy older lenses, more analog lenses. Maybe, yeah. Let me show you. Okay, this is my camera, which is a medium format camera, a very contemporary one from Fuji, a digital one, and this is the lens I use with it. This is a 40-year-old Nikon lens. This is 50 euros, this lens. I mean, you can buy this stuff very cheap online.
You lost Orhan.
You lost Orhan. Yeah, I can complete his sentence maybe, because I mean, the lens is also important, but I think it shouldn't be so sophisticated. The angle of the view and the quality of the glass is important than the other electronic features, I suppose. So you can go the basic ones, but in terms of zoom, I mean, the angle that you see, 16 to 35, something between that area, the range is, I think, enough for interior and exterior also.
And I think the 50 millimeter for the experience, right? Personal experience.
For the experiments, yes. I mean, the 50 millimeter comes with most of the cases in the camera, so, and it's never used by most of the architectural photographers. So
generally, a bad quality comes with it.
Yeah.
A good one is rare. Yeah.
So is the f-stop is like it is important if I'm shooting inside the f-stop, like because you know when the f-stop is lower, it's more expensive. So does it matter, or the light can do the magic?
I mean, you can go with the basic one, because in most cases you are going to shoot with f8.0 and higher than that, because you want a narrower depth of field. And in most cases, you're going to use the tripod, so shutter speed is not so important. So you will go with a slow shutter speed and a very narrow aperture. So your lens shouldn't be, wider, than that one actually. So in most cases, the wide aperture lenses are expensive, but you don't need that.
Okay, thank you. Orhan, the camera couldn't take your lens.
Yeah.
I kind of knew it.
Yeah.
Actually,
did I miss anything?
He completed your sentence.
Okay, thank you.
So it's like different when you're narrating for a client. Of course, it's very much client. You can go for what a client might typically ask for, or you can go for some alternative tracks. But apparently, when you're photographing for yourself, it's mostly the critical or the speculative images, a bit more, how you want to read it. So the photography is kind of has all the problems of what architecture has, right? Having the client or designing for yourself. So you find yourself at totally the same alternative reality for architecture in the field of photography as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Any other questions? Anybody wants to add something? Thank you so much, Ömer and Orhan, for this great presentation and being with us today. Mine Hoca also has some words to share with you, so I'm leaving the screen to her now.
Hello again. Thank you for this delightful presentation. It's been great having you here. We have a little tradition here in ArchiDesign Talks. As Bahçeşehir University Faculty of Architecture and Design, we donate to Tema in our guest's name. So now each of you have 5 young trees in a memorial forest in Eskişehir. Thank you so much for all of your time and effort.
Thank you for having us, and for the trees, of course.
For the trees, yeah. It's a nice gift.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we hope to see you in Istanbul when the things go well, and maybe we will be in the juries together again when the time comes. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
Happy New Year. Have a great evening.
All right.